Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Soccer Podcast presented by the GSMC Sports Network. We have a great show for you today. We will be discussing Enzo Maresca's comments on the current Chelsea squad. We'll discuss Arsenal in their opening day being able to get past Wolves 2-0. We'll discuss the full Phil Foden and Cole Palmer winning PFA awards this season or for this past season. We'll talk about Rafa Benitez naming Steven Gerrard as the best player he coached, which, he happened to be a coach at Real Madrid with Ronaldo. And make sure you stick around for the end of the show where I'll be giving you my thoughts on some of the top headlines going on in the soccer world. Before we start off, though, I'd like to say if you want to make absolutely sure your message stands out and gets featured on the show, there's an easy way to do that. Use the super chat feature. Just click the $sign. It should be at the bottom of the chat box to send in your super chat. This guarantees that your message gets on the air, and it's also a fantastic way to support our channel. We rely on your support to keep bringing you the sports content you love, and we appreciate every bit of it. So go ahead and let us know what you're thinking. Hit that super chat button, and let's keep this show as interactive and exciting as possible. And if you prefer, you can also go to GSMC Podcast. Excuse me. You can also go to gsmcpodcast.net to tip, donate, and leave a comment or question there. We couldn't do what we do without your amazing support, and we're so thankful to have you as part of our community. But let's transition. We have to start off with Enzo Maresca and his comments on this current Chelsea squad. Now, with João Felix is coming in, we know how bloated the squad is. We're talking 40, 45 plus players, a ridiculous amount. But Enzo Maresca, wants to be on the more positive side of it, defending the club in terms of the outsider notion that it's a mess, that there's too many players, that there's not enough places in the dressing room, not enough seats in the dressing room. We've heard it all, but when speaking about it ahead of their Conference League playoff, where they'll be playing the Swiss club Servette tomorrow. By the way, Chelsea do have a midweek game already so far playing in Servette. They get to play that game at Stamford Bridge in the first leg before they fly off to Switzerland for next Thursday's second leg tie. But when Enzo Maresca was discussing the situation right now, he said, I am not working with 42 players. That is something from outside. I'm working in this moment with 21 players. Today's session is with 20 players. Yesterday's session was 21. So the other 15 or 20, they are training apart. In the USA, when he was talking about preseason, of course, in the USA we have 26 or 27 players. So are there Chelsea players? 42, 43. So are there 42, 43 Chelsea players? Yes, for sure. But they're not working with me every day. I don't see them, so it's not a mess like it looks from outside. Absolutely not. I am here to take the decisions and think only the best for us. I'm not thinking about how many years contract they have. It is not my job. If they have a 6-year contract but I don't like them, they can have a 20-year contract. I don't care. I am just here to make the right decisions for the team. No more than that about the contract situation. It is not my job. When he spoke about the Raheem Sterling situation, regarding Raheem Sterling being left out of the squad over this past weekend's tie against Manchester City, he was also again. And then after that, his representatives came out with that statement that I've read now on the show that I read. I believe I read it yesterday. On top of that, he's been left out for the squad to take on Servette tomorrow. And speaking about the Raheem Sterling situation, he said, I spoke with Raheem one-to-one the day before City, and I explained to him exactly the situation. I don't see Raheem after the game. He is training apart, as I said. In case I sit with Raheem, I will tell him exactly the same thing that I already told him. I don't have anything new to tell him because I was quite clear. Yeah, it's just very interesting thing going on with Sterling. It's clear, Sterling needs to find himself out of Chelsea. He's not gonna get the. Is this the relationship is not? I don't think the relationship is scarred or anything. I just think, Raheem Sterling at this point in his career, he needs to be a starter, game in, game out, playing at playing for a club. And I think Juventus would be the perfect move for him. So I do. Whenever Maresca was talking about the Gallagher situation, how they needed to sell him to comply with Premier League profit and sustainability rules, and speaking about the Gallagher's name being chanted in the game against City, he said, Enzo Maresca did in that same press conference, it is not only for Chelsea. Many clubs in the moment are selling players from the academy. That is very sad because we all love. I mentioned the other day we have Totti. He played in Roma for 20 years. It was his team, and we all love that. Now in this moment, the rules are a bit different, and sometimes you need to sell your academy players to have 100% profit, and it is the situation. Also, the rules, they are there, so we need to at least to respect the rules. Yeah, it was hard reading that quote there because obviously, Enzo Maresca is being a foreigner, so his grammar is not going to be exactly perfect. But that's something I should have noticed and, kind of edited on my own while I was reading it. But look, for me, there was a whole lot of bluff in there. Some things, going back, he doesn't train with the 42, 43 players. Only 20 or 21 are with him every day. Well, I mean, that means a lot of players that are decent are not actually training with the first team, which is an issue in amongst itself. You have players like Raheem Sterling that you paid a big fee for that's not even involved. A guy like Ben Chilwell, who has had injury concerns and has not been at his best for a while now, but doesn't even get a look in the first team, doesn't even get a look in training, is not even allowed to trade. It really is a mess. And look, now with João Felix coming in, is Mikhailo Mudryk, is he the one that's gonna be sent off the squad? Is it gonna be Noni Madueke? It's just even more. It just gets more and more interesting. I mean, that's the nicest way to put it. Interesting is what it is. And yeah, a lot of it was bluff, like the profit and sustainability rules that Chelsea. Okay, look. Yes, there are other clubs selling academy players, but Conor Gallagher and Trevor Chalobah has been one of their two more consistent players over the past few years or so. I don't see City selling their consistent academy players. Now, I know they sold Cole Palmer, which Chelsea benefit off of, but it was Cole Palmer that was kind of forcing City's hand. A lot of it was bluff in what he said. A lot of it was bluff. But look, again, we have to call it what it is. Enzo Maresca is a little bit of a yes man at Chelsea in the fact that, it was clear they wanted to go for a lesser known manager that's willing to accept the role of being strictly the head coach and not really the manager, not being involved with transfers or any of that. Just be purely a coach of the team and let all the higher ups do all the transfer strategy and the players in. And yes, Maresca was able to bring in a player he wanted like Dewsbury Hall. But it's clear that he's not going to have final say in terms of his team, that he's really going to be strictly a head coach and has nothing to do with the transfer strategy. And now he's out here being a cover-up, almost being the defenders of this current Chelsea regime. and yeah, it's really sad. Um, but again, Chelsea they have a lot to handle now. They still have a few players that they still need to let go over these next days or so. Enzo Maresca he has a huge mission in trying to fit João Felix, Pedro Neto, Nkunku, Cole Palmer, Nicholas Jackson, Mikhailo Mudryk, Noni Madueke. You're looking at Mikhailo Mudryk is, how many minutes is Mikhailo Mudryk going to get this season when there's already the likes of Pedro Neto, Nkunku, João Felix, Cole Palmer, all playing in those similar positions? Noni Madueke. How many players is Mikhailo? How many quality minutes is Mikhailo Mudryk going to get this season? This is a player that Chelsea paid 100+ million for. 100 million or so from Shakhtar Donetsk could take him away from Arsenal, who hasn't got off to the right foot at Chelsea up to this point. How is he gonna get the minute? How is he gonna be able to get the minutes and play enough games to finally find his stride? How is he gonna fit in Pedro Neto in there? How is Nkunku and João Felix that do pretty much play very similar roles, take up similar pockets of spaces on the pitch? How are you going to fit those two players together that do it in two completely different ways, but they pick up similar pockets of spaces? And then on top of that, how are you going to manage the squad? Who's the next player to go down now that João Felix is coming up? Who are you going to drop, Who are you going to drop from the squad against, you're already having to drop a player like Raheem Sterling and Ben Chilwell, It's really frustrating as a Chelsea fan. It's really, really frustrating as a Chelsea fan. It's really frustrating hearing that press conference because, look, he's kind of a muppet right now. And, he's really up against it. He has a lot to do. They're coming off a poor result, but unexpected result, and not as bad as we thought it would be. But, look, Enzo Maresca has a lot on his plate. And, there's going to be a lot of pressure because, this is Chelsea at the end of the day, and the expectations are always going to be high. But the situation Chelsea find themselves in is unbelievable. It really is. And again, I asked the question that Gary Neville asked yesterday: what do these Chelsea owners know that these other top owners throughout world football do not know in terms of being able to handle finances? I don't know. Short break here though. Coming up when we come back, we'll talk about how impressive Arsenal were in their opening Premier League game against Wolves.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign.
I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows for 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
Before the break, we discussed Enzo Maresca's comments on the Chelsea squad. We move on to talk about Arsenal. They were able to take an opening day victory behind goals from Kai Havertz and Bukayo Saka as they got past Wolves. In the opening game of the season, they got to open up their campaign at home at the Emirates Stadium, and and they were able to get the job done. Let's go to the stats real quick. So yeah, Arsenal had double the amount of shots and shots on target to Wolves. 18 shots for Arsenal, 9 shots for Wolves, 6 shots on target for Arsenal, 3 shots on target for Wolves, 53% possession, 47% for Wolves. Overall, a comfortable victory. And look, I'll tell you what, this is a good way to start off the season. For Arsenal, it's expected over last season, how they got off a little bit to a slower start than normal, which ended up biting them from behind. Starting off your opening day, victory, comfortable fashion, never really in doubt. Getting goals from Kai Havertz, who it was good that he was able to get on the goal sheet, because in terms of the European Championships, wasn't really at his best. Had a decent European Championship, but in terms of goal scoring, wasn't at his best. Wasn't able. They looked a little bit more deadly with Fulkrug in, and but it seems like he's found himself a safe spot in Arsenal right now. He's in his comfort zone, and he's scoring goals, and he's efficient, and he's playing some really good football. I thought overall his play was good. He had one play, he received the ball in a tight pocket, and then hit it right. I don't know if it was a miscontrol, but it went right into Bukayo Saka's pass, and then it led to a shot on target. And yeah, that's just, when Kai Havertz is playing good, it makes Arsenal that much more dynamic. More dynamic. They looked fluid. They looked comfortable. They were able to get crosses into the box. The goal led from a Bukayo Saka. Bukayo Saka had a goal and assist. A brilliant cross left foot. Kai Havertz making that sort of center forward run, which is something we've questioned. Yes, at the 9, he could give you technique, and he has quality, and he can, he can be a connector and all that, build out play and all that, but can he do the dirty work as a number 9? Can he get on the end of crosses? Can he make those runs across the 6-yard box, being at the right place at the right time that a striker is always at? Well, so far to the season, he's done that with that opening goal. And, Wolves, they had their chances. They had a free kick in the 27th or 8th minutes or so from Belgrade that threatened Raya. And yeah, but apart from that, I thought Arsenal looked pretty comfortable. I thought they were a little unlucky not to have a penalty. Arsenal in the 30th minute when Saka went down. And yeah, they just created a lot of opportunities. I believe right before the half, they also had one with, I believe it was Martinelli. It got deflected over the bar on a good play. I think it was a good ball Bladen from Declan Rice, I believed. So yeah, I thought Arsenal, they looked pretty comfortable. And they looked pretty brilliant. They had a lot of opportunities. I thought Wolves had a few opportunities also in the second half as well. David Raya, he made one combination of him making a mistake and also a bad pass from Saliba. I think they were both equally to blame, but it led to an opportunity for Wolves. But apart from that, Arsenal defensively pretty solid, and then it really came down to whether or not Arsenal could get that second goal to smoothen it, because one goal lead is never safe. And then Bukayo Saka doing what he does best, cutting it onto left foot and rockets a ball into the back net. And I have to say, watching it, I did question Jose Sa. I never have sympathy with a goalkeeper getting beat near post. You're already lining up, you're protecting that near post. Yes, the ball is played in with pace, but it's far enough out. For me, he should be able to save that. He should be able to save that. It's near post. It's not exactly from point blank range. You have time to see it. Yes, it's coming in with pace, but it's not even exactly in the corner as well. I think his reaction is a little bit slow. I don't think he gets the reach on it that he expects himself. The reflex is not quick enough. For me, he should have done better there. But again, Bukayo Saka doing what he does best, cutting in on his left foot. And I guess my biggest pet peeve about people defending Bukayo Saka is people always let him cut onto his left. He always have miles of space cutting on his left. And for me, I don't really understand it. Close off his left feet. Make him go to the byline. I don't understand that, but that's something for all the left backs in the Premier League to deal with. Left backs, right? Because he's a right wing. Yeah, left backs to deal with. But overall, great start for Arsenal. And this new chase for them to battle with Manchester City, to compete for them game in, game out, to win the league. You gotta take advantage. You gotta capitalize on your opportunities. You gotta be very, very consistent. You gotta be very, very clinical. And now, yesterday they went in with the tried and tested players in terms of Saliba, Gabriel, Zinchenko, Ben White, Odegaard, Partey, Declan Rice, which allowed Declan Rice to play a little bit more in an advanced role with Thomas Partey sitting, which allowed him to create that ball, to create an opportunity for Martinelli that should have been their second at the end of the half. And then Saka, Havertz, Martinelli. But now you have the likes of Jordan Timber, who's essentially a new signing, Ricardo Calafiori, that gives you a little bit something different. We see how Mikel Arteta eases them into this Premier League campaign. Because last year he was able to gradually throughout the season start manipulating the lineups and start changing the way the team looked. I like to see how Mikel Arteta does that to keep the level of performances up there. It's a good start. They didn't play Arsenal. They didn't play to the level that they're expected to. You go back last year, they had so many games where they scored 5-6 goals. They have played at an unbelievable level, but now they're just trying to develop that sort of consistency, that sort of winning mentality that this team has. This team has that winning mentality, and you're seeing it already in the way that they started off. Look, Arsenal, they're a very good team. They're a very good team, and they're not a team to be underestimated. They have a quality now. They have depth in terms of the center backs position, in terms of fullback position. They got midfielders in there that can defend, that have quality going forward. They have the cute and cleverness of Odegaard. You got verticality from Saka, Martinelli. You got a Havertz that's found his comfort zone at Arsenal, and then you have a guy like Gabriel Jesus off the bench that can make an impact as well, playing that sort of striker position. We didn't even talk about Jorginho. That's an added element in certain games. You can bring him on, and he can control and be the composer in that midfield to give you something a little bit different. Thomas Partey. Now, the reason why he's not in there right now is he doesn't give you the athleticism and physicality that Thomas Partey has, which allows Declan Rice to drive up, drive forward, because Thomas Partey will have the athleticism to get around and defend. But in certain games, Jorginho will be important, and Jorginho will provide a different element in terms of how Arsenal want to play. So there's flexibility in this team. They can do it in multiple different ways. They have the depth now. They have that winning mentality. But the biggest thing overall is Manchester City is still there. And now they're getting Gundogan back, which makes them that much better. Man, that's the only downside that you have in terms of, if you're an Arsenal fan. The only thing you can think about that, provides any sort of negativity to your emotions is the fact that Manchester City are still there and they're not coming down. I don't expect Manchester City to come down. So for Arsenal to win the title, they're going to have to be unbelievably great to win the title. Great will not win the title. Arsenal were great last season. Great will not win you the title. Being unbelievably great will win you the title. That's just the time and day that we find ourselves in. But Arsenal were very impressive in their opening game, I have to say. The performance itself was not great. It was decent, but in terms of it being the opening game, I was impressed. Short break here coming up. When we come back, we'll talk about Phil Foden and Cole Palmer winning PFA awards.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
Before the break, we talked about how impressive Arsenal were in their opening Premier League game against Wolves. We move on to talk about Phil Foden and Cole Palmer winning PFA awards. Yeah. So Phil Foden, he was named PFA Player of the Year after this past season, and this was actually 3 months after winning the FWA Football of the Year, after him being a catalyst from this Manchester City team that won their 4th successful Premier League title. Phil Foden is actually the 4th City player in the last 5 years to be voted as Player of the Year. Kevin De Bruyne did it two years now, 2020, 21 year back to back. And Erling Haaland did it in the 2023 season. I'm trying to wonder who won the PFA Player of the Year in 2022. I'm trying to see who won the PFA Player in 2022, because I know City won the... Oh, Salah, okay. Salah won in 2021, 2022. Okay, that's expected. That was the year that Liverpool took City to the final day. Okay, but Salah must have won that multiple times now, at least. So yeah, Phil Foden, he's not a stranger to winning awards, the PFA awards. He's won the PFA Young Player of the Year in 2021 and 2022. And yeah, actually, the Manchester City's women's team forward Khadija Shaw also claimed the women's player of the year. So this is something that Manchester City, they're running up Khadija Shaw, Jamaican woman international. But going back to Philip Foden, and then Cole Palmer was also announced the winner of the PFA Young Player of the Year after scoring 27 goals and registering 15 assists in all competition. This is actually his first season at Chelsea since being sold from Manchester City this past August. And let's start off with Phil Foden, obviously winning PFA Player of the Year. Tremendous season. He had that great start off to his career. Not start, because it wasn't really the start of his career, but that first season that he broke into playing game in, game out in the COVID campaign where they won the Premier League City. We remember Phil Foden, he had his magical moments. He had that great goal away to Liverpool at Anfield, that great performance that he had there. He broke himself in and he made himself permanent player into the first team. Then he had a little bit of, not slip-ups, but not as great of a season in the 21-22 season. Not to the, wasn't a really high climb. We expected him to go from where he was, that COVID season to sky high into the Mbappe realm. He didn't quite reach that. Little bit of inconsistent performance. But I say this past season, he rediscovered himself. It was an absolutely great season for Philip Foden. Not just playing as a winger, but also how important he's been in terms of him playing in midfield, in which he's really thrived at. Picking up pockets of space in midfield, being a deadly player in there. Especially with De Bruyne being down, he was very vital. Phil Foden was. He was extremely vital when Kevin De Bruyne went down. And yeah, he's an absolutely brilliant player. He's just technically so gifted. English players now, they're starting to develop these sort of technically very, very clever players that can play in tight spaces, that can pick up different pockets of spaces and be very effective. He has that wicked left foot. You go back to the goal that he was able to score against Real. No, was it against Real Madrid? Yeah. It was against Real Madrid. That wicked, and he scores those kind of goals commonly nowadays. He's just a brilliant player with some real quality, real class, and be aware because he has a real ability. And I think this is a player that's gonna be, at England, he didn't really have the performances that we've seen from him at England. He wasn't great. He just didn't look like himself. Now, a lot of the English players did not look like himself. He was playing in, the sort of role, pure winger role, but he was trying to pick up different pocket of spaces, trying to get more involved. And, there was a lot of misplaced passes. He was doing a lot of the simple things wrong. But, what we see from him at Manchester City, especially this past season, he was absolutely electric, extremely dynamic, extremely threatening, has extreme confidence, is willing to try things that other players are not willing to try. And there's just that factor with him. If he's on the pitch, you just don't know what's going to happen. And that's the deadly player is. He has a rocket shot. He has a record technical ability. For me, he's a great player, and it's a player that Guardiola loves. So, But let's go back to Cole Palmer now. He won PFA Young Player of the Year, which Phil Foden has done twice now. In his first real season playing in the Premier League, getting first team appearances, and he scored. And he had a ridiculous 27 goals and 15 assists in all competitions in his first season in the Premier League, or first season at Stamford Bridge. The 27 goals and 15 assists came in all competitions. And he was really one of the few bright spots that Chelsea had this past season. The quality he has in terms of, number one, I go back to him, the belief and the confidence and a little bit of cockiness, but in a good way that he had, that he didn't want to sit around at Manchester City and wait for his turn. He wanted to grab it. He had that killer will to say, I want out. I want to be able to play in a team that I can play game in, game out. And he had that sort of desire to him and that sort of mentality. And he backed himself, he believed in himself, and boy, did he pay dividends this past season, because he was extremely vital in terms of the goals that he scored, the flair he had, being able to nutmeg players and score wonder goals, being able to chip goalkeepers from the halfway line, the things he was trying, the passes, how much Chelsea relied on him, not just in terms of his goals, but also his creativity. He was vital in terms of opening up space for his teammates, picking out balls in behind, playing that sort of midfield role. And again, That's why I don't like him playing in the winger roles. He can play that sort of role, that right winger role, cutting it on his left foot, that a brilliant left foot. But if he's picking up the ball in midfield, he has more opportunities to create for teammates and also has an opportunity to create for himself. He can pick up more pockets of space that can find himself more deadly. And keep in mind, Cole Palmer, I talk about his killer will, the killer mentality. His mentality is great. And you see that in the way he came in off the bench in the European Championship final and he impacted. He scored that goal to equalize it out of nowhere. That's just him. That's just who Cole Palmer is. He's electric. He's dynamite. He was one of the few England players watching this European Championship. In the few moments Cole Palmer was able to play, you thought every time he got on the ball, you thought something could happen. He was getting past players. He was being dynamic. He was being electric. He was one of the few players who thought that. Every other, all the other players that when at this European Championship for England, they got on the ball. We were just like, oh boy, what's gonna happen here? There's nothing. There was no excitement. Every time Cole Palmer got on the ball, as a first person that actively roots against England because of how biased their media is. I was extremely fearing what the capabilities that he could provide, Cole Palmer. And now it's just the key for him is to add on to what he did last season and build some sort of consistency. There's been some one-year wonders in football. There has been some serious one-year wonders. Does Cole Palmer have what it takes to be consistent, to play at this level, game in and game out? Is he that sort of player? We all look forward to that. Short break here coming up though. When we come back, we'll talk about Rafa Benitez snubbing Ronaldo as he named Steven Gerrard the best player he coached.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Before the break, we talked about Phil Foden and Cole Palmer winning PFA awards. We move on to talk about Rafa Benitez essentially, snubbing Ronaldo as he named Steven Gerrard the best player he coached. Now, number one, this happened on by the way, this whole interview that he did on the overlap was an extremely great watch, extremely great listen. I enjoyed it, and I enjoy a lot of the interviews that they do on that network. I have to say, they're a fantastic show. But Rafa Benitez, look, he wasn't asked who's the best player he coached. He was discussing Steven Gerrard and how what places on the pitch that he likes him playing and all that. He was discussing how he was able to fit him with certain players that were at Liverpool at the time because of his unique capabilities. And he dropped the bomb saying Steven Gerrard's the best player I coached. And I couldn't say this while I was Madrid, but now I can. Steven Gerrard's the best player he coached, and yes, he did coach Cristiano Ronaldo. He coached a lot of fantastic players. Rafa Benitez did, but he named Steven Gerrard. And look, we're gonna go from both sides of it. We're gonna go from the angle of him praising Steven Gerrard, and also the angle of him discussing and we're also going to talk about, was this really a snub at Ronaldo? But speaking about Steven Gerrard, he was a brilliant player. He was great in terms of his ability, his passing range. He had the ability played a cute and clever balls, had the short range passing, had the long range passing. He was able to do the defensive dirty work. He had the athleticism to get around it defensively. He could tackle. He could defend. He could also score goals. He could be a factor with the late runs he made into the mocks. And he played with such spirit and personality, and he really put his foot on every game that he played in. He's a brilliant player. He was a brilliant player, and his ball control, his touch, his dribble, he was able to get past players. There was not much weaknesses in his game. In fact, he could do so many things so well that it made it difficult for it made it difficult for Liverpool managers and England managers where to fit him. He just had that much quality. He could play in the center of midfield. He could play as a number 10. He could play out in wide midfield positions. He had that nature to do a little bit of everything, and it made it a little bit difficult for coaches to, in that show, Rafa Benitez talks about all about the different places that he would play him. And we know for sure the issues that Sven-Göran Eriksson had fitting him, not only him, but also the likes of Paul Scholes and Frank Lampard. But look, Steven Gerrard, he just couldn't do many things. There was just not much things that he couldn't do. He could literally do everything in that midfield position. Just the ability that he had, and then the fact that he could also, put a tackle in, and he could defend as well. Now you play him as a number 8. You leave your 6 you leave that midfielder a little bit vulnerable, because he has, it's his nature to float up and get forward because of the brilliant ability that he has, and that's just him. But he was also good defensively, and he could put in a shift. Later on in his career, he did play in more of a holding sort of role because he had those sort of abilities, and it made it a little bit easier for him to preserve his career. And we saw him do that for Liverpool as well, brilliantly as well. But yeah, there's always the debate discussing Steven Gerrard, Paul Scholes, Frank Lampard. There's always that sort of debate. But for me, Paul Scholes was out of those 3 most technically gifted in terms of he could play every single ball on the pitch. He could play in tight spaces. He was very technically gifted. He was very cute and clever. He was most technically gifted out of them, but he didn't have the physicality he didn't have the physical nature that the players like Lampard and Steven Gerrard had. Lampard, also technically a gifted player, but not quite as gifted as Paul Scholes or even Stevie G to an extent, but he had the best capacity of making the runs into the box, scoring goals, being dynamic, getting 20 plus goals in midfield consistently is an extreme accomplishment, and what he was able to do in terms of goal scoring and in terms of his late runs in the box being hard to track is second to none. Probably the best midfield goal scorer in the Premier League history. But Steven Gerrard, he had everything. He had a little bit of everything, and that's what, for me, out of those 3, he was the most complete player. And this is coming from a Chelsea fan. Steven Gerrard, he had that ability. He had that technical ability. He had that passing range. He had that dribbling. He had that ability to go forward and score. He didn't have the ability to score as well as Frank Lampard, but he also had other things that Frank Lampard couldn't do. He wasn't quite as technically gifted in terms of technically gifted in tight spaces as Paul Scholes did, but he was still very gifted himself and had other aspects to his game that Paul Scholes did not have. In the fact that Steven Gerrard was a little bit more threats in terms of scoring a goal, had much more of a defensive nature to him. So for me, when I speak about those 3, I have to give that slight edge to Steven Gerrard. They're all 3 great midfield players, but I do give to Steve Gerrard the edge in terms of, I think from all 3, he is the most complete player also. And Rafa Benitez was very forthcoming on his opinion on Steven Gerrard. Going back to snubbing Ronaldo, and that's the main thing here, snubbing Ronaldo. Look, yes, there's a lot of people that are going to say He didn't even get to coach Cristiano Ronaldo for a full year. He won a Premier League with Stevie G. Obviously, he's tied up. It doesn't matter. Let's be honest. That does not matter. Rafa Benitez, if he truly believed Ronaldo was a better player than Steven Gerrard, he would have, he wouldn't say Steven Gerrard is the best player he's coached. This is something Rafa Benitez believes, and I'm not gonna discredit his opinion or anything, because he's watched those two players play. He's seen them in training, he's seen them up close. No matter how long Rafa Benitez was at Real Madrid, he still got to see Ronaldo up close in the 2015-16 season for however long he was manager, and he came to the conclusion that Steven Gerrard was a better player. And I ask you this question: can you imagine Guardiola, Setien, Luis Enrique, Pochettino, any of these managers that has managed Messi to say, oh, Iniesta is better than him? Or for Pochettino's case, Verratti is the best player I coached. Or no, let's imagine Pochettino who's coached Messi, and he coached Messi later on. Okay, maybe Pochettino's not a bad example, but let's go, Pep Guardiola. Would he ever say Iniesta is better than Messi? Or even let's go to Pochettino. Would he say Moussa Dembele, who's happened to be a very brilliant player, very technically gifted player? Would Pochettino come out and say Dembele is the best player? No. Moussa Dembele is the best player? No. So for me, this just adds to the notion that this Messi-Ronaldo debate is as much of a farce as we still think it is. It's really a joke. It's really something perpetrated by the media to give Messi a competitor. Ronaldo is a brilliant player, very gifted, hard-working, talented, but hard worker in the way that he's been able to turn around his career. But in terms of Messi and his just pure technical ability, and the fact that he still has the ability to get goals himself, and also is a great player in terms of being able to create for his teammates. Look, for me, the Messi-Ronaldo debate is just getting a little bit old. Messi won the World Cup. Messi has 2 Copa Americas now, and I don't like doing this Messi-Ronaldo thing all over again. But it's little things like this with Rafa Benitez snubbing Ronaldo. You don't see that with Messi. How many former teammates have you seen of Ronaldo come out and say Ronaldo's not the best player they've played with? So many. Or how many former Ronaldo teammates have said Messi is better than Ronaldo? Wayne Rooney came out and said Messi is better than Ronaldo. I've heard that from multiple Ronaldo teammates now. That's something you don't hear from Messi teammates. I can't think of one actually from the top of my head, and that's something that Ronaldo fans, they need to ask themselves. Like, am I making all this up? I'm not making this up. But going back to the whole interview that Rafa Benitez did was great. Talking about the Champions League final, it was a great in-bit on that. Talking about how he was, that he didn't quite really believe, but he had to sort of fake it till he make it in the locker room when they were down 3-0, even though he didn't really believe that they could really come back. He talked about his relationship with Xabi Alonso, getting kind of grilled from his former player, Jamie Carragher, who was also involved in those teams that had Xabi Alonso, and that sort of falling out that they had. He talked about the Champions League final, of course, that I already talked about. But yeah, overall it's a great interview. So I really enjoyed it, and yeah. Short break here coming up, though. When we come back, we'll discuss some of the top soccer headlines going on in the soccer world. Before the break, we talked about Rafa Benitez snubbing Ronaldo as he named Steven Gerrard the best player and coach. We move on to react to some of the top soccer headlines going on in the soccer world. And the Gundogan reunion to City. I remember yesterday discussing this. I did a whole segment on it. My main question about it was, does Gundogan want to renew with Manchester City? And it seems like Gundogan does. There's pictures of him, going to Manchester, flying out to Manchester. It's reported that City are close to a deal with Barcelona, that they're near agreement, and I think it's a good addition for Manchester City in terms of Gundogan is a player that he's done it at Manchester City. He's comfortable there. He's played brilliantly well. Pep Guardiola knows exactly where to employ him. He's a very gifted midfielder. Can slot in right between De Bruyne and Rodri. No problems. No needs to be nothing needs to be asked. He'll fit in perfectly. He'll get in, do the job. Very tidy player, difficult to contain, and City want him back. And that's really the perfect situation for Gundogan after sort of being kind of forced out at Barcelona, going to a team like Manchester City that are still competing at the top of the top. So he doesn't really have a downgrade in terms of what he's competing for. So great deal for City, great deal for Gundogan. Really match made. Perfect. And yeah, it's going to be a 12 months contract, a 1-year deal with an option to extend. Sergio Roberto is going to sign with Como. He's gonna join. He's actually a former teammate of Cesc Fabregas, who's the manager at Como, and yeah, after a free transfer, it's gonna be a free transfer after leaving Barcelona. He's gonna go to Como, and there's a lot of Spanish players that actually been at Como that are arriving at Como. Pepe Reina, Alberto Moreno, who Alberto Moreno. I haven't seen him for a while. He was, at Liverpool for 5 years or so. Then he went to Villarreal. Now he's gonna be at Como. Nico Paz is also set to join Como. They've also added the likes of Varane as well and Andrea Belotti. They kicked off their Serie A title or Serie A campaign with a 3-0 defeat to Juventus, but they look to bounce back off that. And yeah, the good signing for them and being able to get Sergio Roberto, sort of that good leadership and someone that's done it at the highest level. Dortmund fans, they're planning to protest this at the start of their Bundesliga campaign this season, and a protest with the club's sponsorship deal with Rheinmetall. Rheinmetall is an arms manufacturer. So it's obvious what's going on there. Dortmund fan group. One of the Dortmund sporting associations, the Sodribon Dortmund, said in a statement, "We won't allow ourselves to be hitched to your wagon. We firmly reject the idea that management and its committees at BVB have agreed to use Borussia Dortmund appeal to improve the public image of an arms company and throw their own values overboard in the process." Now, Dortmund announced this deal, 3-year sponsorship deal, 3 days before the Champions League final. And yeah, Rheinmetall is the world's largest maker of artillery ammunition, and is expected to make a record group sale of around 10 billion euros this year. And yeah, it's this is something Borussia Dortmund fans are not a fan of. They labeled this as a bombshell, and yeah, Speaking about it, they also said the timing of the announcement suggests reactions to this controversial decision were deliberately intended to be overshadowed by the reporting on the Champions League final. Negative effects on fans were consciously taken into account. Sudri Tribune appealed to all their Dortmund fans that are going to their Saturday match when they kick off at the playing at the Yellow Wall at the Signal Iduna Stadium. Sud Tribune wanted all the fans that are going to that game to make their opposition to this deal known. Please, when speaking about it, they said, please prepare signs and or banners with which you can express your criticism at the start of the second half. Dortmund's chairman, Hans-Joachim Watzke, defended the deal saying, previously he defended the deal saying, when we see every day how freedom must be defended in Europe, we should deal with this new normality. So it's interesting to see how these protests can go. I love when fans want to stand up for their voice. They deserve it, especially in the Bundesliga. There's no majority owner, it's the 49+1 sort of rule in terms of, fans being owners, predominant owners of the teams. And yeah, I think the fans will make the noise, and I think they'll be heard. I think in the Bundesliga, they respect the fans' opinion and the fact that you can't have majority owners. They're all, majority owned by fans. So that's going to be an interesting thing to see. Barcelona, they're weighing up a move for Federico Chiesa. They're working against the clock to sign as this new as the transfer window will close soon. But yeah, Chiesa is emerged as one of Barcelona's options since they weren't able to get Nico Williams to go. So we see if that deal will be able to get through. Apart from that, no real breaking news that has happened. I haven't heard much on transfers. Much on transfers right now. We're just waiting for a few to get through. Columbus Crew LAFC, they advanced to the Leagues Cup final. Barcelona are considering selling Christensen. Marino to Arsenal is getting a little bit closer as the Real Sociedad chief takes a step towards completing the deal. The Gunners and Real Sociedad have been talks over this deal throughout this summer, but the negotiations really took the next level this past week, and now it seems like this transfer is very, very likely, and they left out Mikel Merino out of the squad in their opening La Liga game in the season against Rayo Vallecano, which they lost. There must be a clear reason for that. Mikel Merino is one of their more important players, so it seems like he'll be able to. He'll get that move to Arsenal. He has that sort of good technical ability. He also has height that makes him a threat in set pieces. He'll be a great in terms of connector of play. I think he'll fit in playing with Declan Rice and Martin Odegaard. Provide even more depth to the team. So yeah, I think if that signing will get through, I think Mikel Merino will be one heck of a player for Arsenal. Paulo Dybala, he accepts an offer to join Al Qadsiya. Club is yet to strike the deal with them, but the Roma has not agreed with Al Qadsiya on a fee so far. But it seemed like Paulo Dybala, he's made the decision to make this move. He's gonna have he's gonna make that a ridiculous amount of money that Saudi Arabia can provide for you, and I don't think Paulo Dybala. I'm not saying his career is over by going to Saudi, but really from the quality he had, I don't think he reached the level and heights that I expected a player of his ability to do. When you see what he's done in his club career, he had some decent years at Juventus, but didn't really take that next level at Argentina. Just never find a way to fit in with Messi was constantly neglected by the Argentinian managers, not just Scaloni, but also who was their crazy deranged manager at the 2018 World Cup? What was his name? He was also the manager of Chile. Man, what's his name? I remember his face. He has a bald head. I know his name. I know his name thoroughly. He coached at Marseille, I believe, as well. I forgot where he's at right now. Oh, man, I'm not ending the show until I get his name. What was his name? Oh, Sampaoli, Jorge Sampaoli. Yeah, he didn't get into the team with Sampaoli was managing, and Sampaoli is actually now the coach of Flamengo. Or no, he's not. He's not even the head coach of Flamengo. He's currently not coaching anymore. But yeah, I don't think Paulo Dybala reached the heights that he was expected to. But it is what it is. No, it's the end of the show, actually. Thank you guys for tuning in to the GSMC Soccer Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. Your support means a lot to us, so please remember to subscribe to the show and leave a positive review. It really does make a difference. We also invite you to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram for more content and updates. So thank you once again, and have a wonderful, wonderful day.